We're going abroad now. Search and rescue operations continue in Turkey following Monday's earthquakes. Non-profit organization Gift of the Givers is there with the team today and joined several other international teams providing aid, humanitarian and search and rescue. Our reporter Ahmed Kajee and our colleague Max are on site. They are joining us now as search and rescue operations continue in Hatay. Ahmed, what's the latest? We spoke to Dr. Suleiman from Gift of the Givers earlier, him saying hope persists and teams are still eager to, where possible, retrieve those survivors.
Yes, indeed, Erin. That's where we currently are, on the outskirts of the Hatay region today. And as we speak to search and rescue officials to say that there is a hope to still receive and get some survivors outside, at least from underneath these buildings. Unfortunately, where we are right now, it's a rather grim picture. Many of the family members of those who are trapped underneath this particular building have lost hope, in absolute tears, just hoping for some sort of closure. And unfortunately, in this particular instance, the reason for this excavation taking place is search and rescue officials have now turned into search and recover operations. They have found one person, unfortunately, under the rubble. They say it could be a child. They are still waiting for confirmation. Unfortunately, they say they have only seen the bottom half of the child's body, which makes it really unfortunate to see that over here in real time. It's unfortunate that we are seeing it, all of this unfold. We're coming into hope this morning. It's been 5 days of trying to get into these areas, and even though that golden window had passed in the 72 hours where one would normally get the rescuing of many of the survivors who would still be alive but trapped underneath the rubble, with it now being more than 5 days since those devastating earthquakes, unfortunately it's seeming to be more and more a search and recover operation. And that's unfortunately what we are seeing over here. Family members have actually camped outside this house since the earthquake on Monday morning, and just hoping and praying that their loved ones who are trapped inside are still alive. We just were looking at a few of the parents and grandparents of the people of this particular household, absolutely in tears, absolutely devastated at what has taken place, and one can only begin to imagine what they must be going through once their loved one from this particular building happens to come out by the search and recover unit as well. And the Gift of the Givers Association organization and their teams have actually embedded with the team from Oman, which just goes to show the international scale of this particular project. They have come out with their K9 units from South Africa, so it's become a joint operation between the Oman team, the South African K9 unit and Gift of the Givers, all of them working together to try finding at least some of the survivors. But in this particular area, it's going to be a very somber morning heading into the afternoon, as unfortunately one P4 has been found. I'm just going to ask Max to maybe just pan a bit to your right of your screen to just see some of the devastation across the rest of the community over here. You will see unfortunately these buildings have been absolutely devastated, completely destroyed, razed to the ground. Many a times throughout the last week or so that we have been with a Gift of the Givers, we managed to just pick up some of the terminology and what is the correct terms to be using. And the picture on your right hand side, just behind that tractor, the building has fallen in on itself, and that is normally referred to as a pancake collapse. That's when one floor happens to just collapse on the one below, and you can only imagine the devastation that a person would experience if you are on the first or second floor and a 5 or 6 story building collapses in on yourself. We also know that the earthquake struck at around 4:15 in the morning, and everyone was still asleep. Like I mentioned yesterday, the early morning Muslim prayer is later in the winter over here, sunrise only being around 6:30 or 7 a.m. So people would have still been asleep, and when the earthquakes had shocked this area at 7.7 and 7.6 magnitudes respectively, this is just the devastating impact that we have seen. Unfortunately, the foundation and the architectural integrity of these buildings isn't as strong as one would normally expect, and that's the reason for the higher number of casualties, exceeding that 20,000 mark shared between Syria and Turkey as well. But out here in the Hatay region, as we wrap, we will just see, and we will wait to see what the search and rescue teams find. But it's going to be a very somber morning and a very somber afternoon, as the family and the friends of the people within this building will receive some devastating news and updates from these officials as they continue their search and recover operations, which is rather unfortunate and really devastating for the communities over here.
Ahmed, you're reporting there along with our colleague Max Maxwell in Hatay, in Turkey, really rendering the specifics of this. You know, having heard from Dr. Suleiman, him describing 10 provinces affected, some 24,000 fatalities and counting at the moment. You know, he's saying some 23 million people will be affected by those two quakes and the aftershocks, of which there were several. You mentioned the K9 units. We understand that there's one of 5 dogs of 6 handlers from South Africa now on site on the ground in the same region you're in, and another unit en route. I wanted to ask you, Ahmed, you know, you and Dr. Suleiman have spoken about the psychological toll here, you know, the sort of distress that survivors are going through, including families like the one you've just mentioned, just meters from you, hoping to recover another body of a loved one. What is it like for the teams from South Africa that are there? Are these people with skill and experience dealing with this kind of thing, who themselves can manage the sort of witnessed trauma that you are seeing in the aftermath of those quakes?
Yes, very much so. The teams which normally come out on operations such as this ones are highly experienced. Speaking to the team over here, they were out in Indonesia during the previous earthquake. They were out in Syria a few years back, carrying out the operations back in 2019. They were out in Mozambique when the cyclone had hit Beira and the surrounding regions as well. So they've been out and about carrying out these specialized operations. And something to just take into consideration, that as much as they have the training from the search and rescue departments in and around the city of Johannesburg and South Africa as well, they have day-to-day jobs, and their annual leave is normally taken to come out at a day's notice, 12 hours notice, to come out to an area like this, and will more or less be out for about a week, 2 weeks, away from their families, away from their friends, needing to push away deadlines from whatever work they have. So on that front, the highly skilled workers are also putting in much needed efforts to just come out here and do this on a voluntary basis and ensure that in some way or form they can give back to the community. And the humanitarian spirit here on the ground is tangible, to the extent where even the local Turkish residents are actually offering the rescue workers food when they're carrying out the operations, to the extent where, as fellow journalists, as other media personnel not from South Africa and abroad, we're being offered water when standing by with our reports. We're being offered food when we're standing by to carry out our reports. This hospitality from the Turkish people, even during a time of crisis, is something that one wouldn't normally begin to expect to receive, even in the best of times in any other situation. But, the resilient and the human spirit coming out of this particular area is honestly something that one wouldn't bear to expect. It's almost heartwarming and heart-wrenching that when someone going through such a difficult time in their life still has time to think about a guest in their country, visiting to their country, to make their lives easier. And we had spoken to Brother Shaban, who actually traveled 600 kilometers from Antalya to the Hatay region, and he just said him a few friends, they have a hotel group. They've actually housed a few people in some of the hotels that they have in the area over here which weren't damaged, and they started a soup kitchen just got some resources around water and milk and soup, and they've just been feeding the people in the area whoever they can, and just speaking to that hospitality. Yesterday, after we had done our interview with him, he had called myself and Maxwell Salatola and said, I need you to come and have a meal. And as much as the difficulties that they're going through, they are still offering people people in and around the area, strangers in their country, meals, that hospitality is coming through. So that's just the picture of what we are seeing on the ground. Just prior to wrapping, you will see these officials still looking down to see exactly what they can find, just to also keep themselves safe without having the entire building collapse below them as well. It's going to be a really difficult next few hours ahead, as the rescue teams, both from South Africa, Oman, and whichever local authorities are here as well, will try to work their way around to at least try to recover one person, and at least in that way or form give one family some sort of closure as well. We will be continuing with the coverage throughout, both with myself and Maxwell Selotolo, and you will see just a few of the officials over there. Xavier is probably the gentleman just behind the white helmet. He's been at the forefront of some of the operations. He's actually out from Cape Town in Stellenbosch, working out at CPUT, taking time out on really short notice to come out and just assist with these rescue operations as well. But yeah, we will be keeping you posted, and as and when there is an update over here, we will be keeping you posted, and hopefully some families can get the closure that they need, and hopefully we really sincerely hope that there then will be that search and rescue. At least we can find 1 or 2 or 3 survivors who would have obviously went through 5 or 6 days worth of having rubble on top of them, but at least they would have survived. Aaron.
Ahmed Kajee there in Hatay in Turkey with our colleague Maxwell Selotolo. Do stay safe, and we will keep up to speed as things develop there in the aftermath of those quakes.